welcome to another episode of IT Pro TV. I'm your host, Mike Roderick, and with me today is none other than Sean Oriano. How you doing, Sean?
I'm doing pretty good. How you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. We are continuing on with our Kali Linux series, and in this episode, we're going to take a look at some of the information that we can uncover or discover during our reconnaissance phase, and in particular, we're going to be looking at network information that we can discover. One of the big parts of the reconnaissance phase is gathering information on our targets, and that's going to include information about the network that our target's running on, right, Sean?
Yeah, that's exactly it. Is that we're going to get in and start looking at what the network looks like, see what we can discover about it, because we really don't know anything at this point. Remember, well, we could, and I guess it's fair to back up just a bit and give a brief explanation here before we start doing this. Is remember, you could be given the client could be giving you a black box, gray box, or white box test. If they give you a white box test, and you've got a lot of this information as it is. The gray box, limited information. Black box, by definition, you don't get anything. So depending on where you're starting, you may already have some of this. Now, what we're going to kind of assume here is we're just kind of going to assume we're in sort of a semi-quasi black box environment when we are running these things, and just leave it at that. But you could have one of these other situations where they've given you other bits of information along the way and said, yeah, here you go. But that when you encounter that,
just consider yourself lucky and go, whoo, there's a few things I don't have to figure out. They've already given me some of the answers, but it's good to know how to find it. What if they don't give you anything, right? You've got to start from scratch. As you're saying, the good old black box test, right? You don't know anything about, hey, they might give you the domain name, and that might be it.
Yep. It's something to really think about, is what information might they really be giving you from the get-go. And I would also kind of caution you, by the way, don't think just because if you have a white box or gray box, you're completely off the hook for doing a lot of the stuff that we have here. They may give you printouts of that or give you whatever that tells you what things look like. You may still want to run these things just because you want to see what someone that isn't in your situation is going to be able to see, because you're still responsible for that. If they give you a multi-page Word document saying this is how everything's set up, hey, that's great. You've got the whole layout of everything. That should make your job easier, but you still may have to run some of these things to see, well, this is what's behind the scenes that the public doesn't see. If someone uses these tools, how much of this information could they get? So you may still need to do that, but just FYI that we do have different situations. We're kind of sort of in a black box environment right now, even though we're gonna break the rules on that and jump back and forth when we're talking. In the real world, what we're doing here would kind of fit in with the black box type situation.
Nice. All right. So yeah, so they might not give you, or even if they give you the information, but as you said, just because they gave it to me, they still want to know, could somebody get this if we didn't give it to them, is the idea there. All right, so we start out with nothing again, because we're doing this as a lab environment. We're going to actually see both sides of things, but remember, out there in the real world doing your pen test, you might not have that luxury, right? You might be on the outside looking in, and you got to find your way, fumble through the dark, and figure out what the heck's going on.
Yeah, so we've got to start, letting the rubber hit the road and start gathering this information. Now, we'll assume that you already have some, you've already done your open source reconnaissance. If you recall, we do have, when we're doing a reconnaissance phase, there is a passive phase, and then there's an active phase. We're starting to kind of move more into the active side of things, and moving away from just the purely passive stuff. It doesn't mean you're not going to see any of that. There are tools I'm going to demo here that are still, scraping stuff out of open source, places, but you're gonna see some of both. But do expect, or we're setting the expectation here that you've already gone through and done your going through job postings and stuff like that. You've already investigated those sorts of things, and so now you're moving into something that's a little more aggressively engaging the target to gather more information or to confirm what you got from your previous piece of this. remember, just because you got something from whatever source you got it from doesn't mean that it's correct. That could be stale data. That could be data that's completely incorrect. I mean, some of these things that happens. I shouldn't say some of these things. Every place you get out there has information in it that's not correct. It's either it's completely incorrect or there are little pieces of it. So you really want to make sure that you're double checking everything you do. That whole idea of measure twice, cut once, that's what we're going to do. And so we may be double checking these things that we had just to really confirm that yes, we have what we expected to have at this point. So remember, we did stuff in our CEH, we did stuff like Netcraft, and we did a lot of these online browser-based tools to check stuff. Some of those things pulled out just so much information. It'd be tough to kind of go through all that. So you might have to rely on these to confirm it and narrow it down a bit more. So all these things are going to work together, and you really got to be able to see that big picture to make it all work and get what you need to see.
Trust but verify, right? Get
Absolutely.
that information and then verify that information is accurate.
Yeah, don't ever just assume that it's 100% correct. I mean, it's a funny thing. I mean, one of the things I mentioned in the CEH course was a situation where someone gave their pen tester, they gave them information ahead of time. They gave them almost like a gray box situation where they gave the guy IP addresses. And so the pen tester called the lady up that was in charge of this and said, "Well, I need an IP address." Well, she was half asleep, and she was getting ready. She's going to bed. I mean, and heck, to show her state of mind, I remember her telling me that when she was doing, she says, I just had some medical thing done. She says, so I'm on painkillers in there too. So she says, I'm just going down for the night. I'm just popping one in. This guy calls and says, I give him an IP address, and she gave the thing to him and was like, okay, whatever, hung up. She gave the guy an IP address that was incorrect. She was the last octet, I think, was off, and so that was all it took, as you guys know, to go to the wrong target. And so the guy busted into another company and generated a report that he in turn gave to his client, and they were like, "What the heck is this?" So that's trust but verify is a very apt thing to say. Don't just take it on the fact that the information you're getting is 100% correct. I always like to do that thing and make sure that I've got at least 2 to 3 sources that can some way, shape, or form cross-reference one another and give me confidence, whenever possible, that is, that I'm where I'm supposed to be.
You ever find that a company hires a pen tester and then knowingly gives them false information, or is it typically, I want to get what I'm paying for, and so I'm going to give you accurate information?
It does happen. It does happen where they'll stick some stuff in there to see, just kind of how good you are, to test you out. That does indeed happen. But don't expect it. Most of the time, they're paying through the nose already.
They don't want you wasting time on wrong IP address ranges or anything like that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if you're paying me for checking and finding these mistakes in here. Okay, go ahead. It took me an hour or two of sorting through stuff to figure out that this was a dead end that you planted.
That's still billable hours,
yeah,
right?
Guess what? That's gonna be a line item in my invoice. It'll be like, hey, chasing the white rabbit right there. See that? So, but anyway, that's we'll even take that out of the equation too. That someone's giving you. Someone's knowingly giving you bogus information, though it does happen. It's probably not a common occurrence. So anyway, so like I said, we got our open source stuff done. Now we're moving into figuring out the network. Okay, so let's think about what we can get as we start moving over and gathering it. Things we can get and we want to have is we want to have things like IP ranges, subnet ranges. Those are great things to have, and you're going to need them. For our next phase, which is going to be the scanning, which we're going to be seeing that and all the different options we have available there. We're going to see that in a later segment. So we want to have IP ranges. We want to have DNS information wherever it's available. So there's plenty of tools, both built into the Linux operating system that we can use, as well as stuff that Kaylee brings to the table. So we're going to look at that.
And when you say DNS info, you're talking about like who's hosting their DNS, whether it's in-house, whether it's external, and things like that. Finding their
That
servers?
plus other stuff. You
Right.
you can do a lot of things, and I'm definitely going to show you the different options. Some of the stuff you'll be really surprised that you can really surprised what is really there. So anyway, and let me tell you, by the way, even some of the stuff I'm going to show you in here. Some of this stuff isn't going to be really specific. Well, at least the first one's not going to be specific to Kaylee. I'm going to stick it in there just to kind of show you, hey, here's what you can do. But then I'm going to show you some stuff that Kaylee can do, can add to it. So, but in the real world, don't expect, even though this whole discussion here is based on, well, we're talking about Kaylee. Don't get stuck on the fact that if you use this in the real world, do your pen testing. Don't start thinking that, oh, well, if I'm using Kaylee, I have to use only the stuff that's in Kaylee to do things. Some people, they're just going to do that. They're going to go through the menus and look at things, and that's the only stuff they'll ever consider. This is designed, the stuff we have here in Kaylee is just to add on and enhance your existing capabilities. It shouldn't be, oh, I'm just going to stick with the tools that are in Kaylee. If it's something that's an underlying operating system that Kaylee itself didn't bring to the table and it works for you, use it. Absolutely use it. Yes. So just FYI. So let's start going through and gathering information. So I'm gonna start with the first one in here. Is just to kind of put us in the right frame of mind. Is one of the things you could do right at the beginning is just to do an NS lookup in here. So NS lookup. This is definitely part of the operating system. It's not something specific that Kaylee brings to the table, but it's one of the things that I will do initially to kind of position me on the information I'm gonna be getting with doing some of the other stuff. So and what I'm gonna do is I am going to just set it up so I can look for really any type of record. So set type means what I did is I started up NS lookup, then I said set and the type any. So return any type of records is what this is gonna do when I ask it. So I set that up, and now I can just type in a domain. So I can go back and use the same one I used for my previous forays into this and CEH. I'll use Microsoft. If I hit enter on that, you can see, and I know probably a lot of you are familiar with it, but I'm just, like I said, I'm using this to kind of set the stage here for some of the stuff we're going to be doing. If you go through and you look at this, we've got some of the information that we're actually, that was a previous one. You can see in here that, yeah, I've got information, name server information. I've got address information. I mean, take a look at that. These are things, little details that, again, I'm running NS lookup, standard thing. You've seen it before, but there's some things here that I want to kind of just point out for right now, and then we're going to straighten it out, some of this stuff out with a later tool, or figure out how we can do this. If you look at, for example, those two addresses, I mean, we have the 134.70. Blah blah blah. We see two addresses there. You guys may recall when we went to in the CEH, when we did Netcraft, we typed in www.microsoft.com, and it would bring up information about Microsoft.com, pretty much similar to what we've got here, but it would bring up these multiple IP addresses. Well, we learned by looking at Netcraft that we could infer that more than likely, with the results we were getting, when we brought it all together, we could say, yeah, there's a load balancer there. It just didn't match up. So we've already kind of know that from previous experience. But is there other ways, if we were just using Kaylee and we saw that, is there a way that we could actually determine that there really is load balancing in there? Because we don't have information being presented the same way. So right now, what I would do is I would note this information. And by the way, when you run a command in Kaylee, you can do the same thing in Windows. You run a command in Kaylee, you can put the command out on a single line, and just like I could have done here, you can put the command on a single line, and then just do space and do the little greater than sign, and then space, and then put a file name, and you can dump all the results not to the screen but to the text file. So you don't have to, if you're really bad at writing, you don't have to, scribble everything out and try to decipher all those chicken scratches later on.
Oh, that's good.
I'm in that boat. Sounds like you're in that boat.
Yes.
So just FYI, it's a little trick. I use it a couple times in here where I'm demonstrating a couple things, but you could really do that anywhere if you wanted. So just a little tip if you're unaware of that going in. So I go through again. I got the servers up top. I have the IP addresses that go with it. As I scroll through, there's my DNS stuff. Great. There's my DNS information. I've got the information about the zone, on there where it's hosted. So that's some good stuff. I would tell you take note of these server names and all that in here, because there are some of the DNS tools that come up later on that do specifically ask for DNS server names or IP addresses. Which once you got the name, you can get the IP address pretty easily at that point. That's a simple thing to do. But you're going to want to at least have that stuff noted, as the case may be. Now, and let me scoot this over a bit, since it's just so guys can see everything on there. What I have underneath that is I have stuff relating to records that are in there. You can see mail exchanger records and all that good stuff, text records, all those things are sitting in there. So I've got a good amount of information, stuff I would expect to see. So that's a good start, to the process. So again, just a simple, just a very simple NS lookup, nothing really fancy there.
And setting that type to any, so you get that SOA information, those exchangers, because you're not really sure what you're looking for at this point. You just want to get all of it. So that worked well.
Yeah, I usually just choose to do and set type to any when I start, because it just pukes up all this stuff for me, and why it may be a mess when I initially look at it, it still gives me a good amount of it. It gives me a good amount of information right there, so I can say, okay, well, I want to kind of narrow it down. That set type, you can set it equal to specific types of records. So if you don't want to see all this, you can set it to look for very specific things, and when it does that query, it'll come back and just give you what you asked for. So
if you want to look for like just the SOA or just exchanger records for servers or mail servers, or even just A records if you wanted host records or something.
Yeah, exactly. So you don't need to take all of this just in one shot. That may be overwhelming. What you can do is you can actually limit it to, say, just specific types. Your call. Some people might look at the way I do it when I say, hey, dump all this stuff out to the screen. They might look at that as being kind of messy. Okay, that's fine. This is just the way I roll. You guys want to do it differently? Whatever. So we've got NS lookup. So we got that information, and you guys can, like I said, you can go ahead and confirm this stuff with by going through Netcraft if you want. If you remember that one, that's totally fine. So there we go. Now the question is, where do we go from here? Since we're done with that, where do we go? Where do we go with here? We'll just assume that we've got the NS lookup stuff noted, and we're ready to start moving on. So there's going to be some different steps to do at this point. So we got DNS. What else could we do? What would be useful? IP ranges, perhaps. Getting more more information than what we've got here. Stuff I would consider doing is I could do and let me go out of this in here. Is one of the things you can do is you do have your who is. I do pull this usually right around the same thing. This is right around the same time. This is one of the things, by the way, who is. Just to kind of set the stage for it, is we did go through this in CEH, but we didn't do it this way. We did it by going through a web page. We opened up a browser, and when we opened up the browser, we went to the Who Is website and popped the stuff in and called it a day. That's totally fine to do it. One of my things I don't like to do is I don't like to rely too much on tools, and this is just me. I like to, wherever possible at least, have tools that I can use without having to go to a website, because that website may be down, it may be unreliable, it may be filtered, whatever. So I like to, wherever possible, have tools local that I could use to do this. So we used Whois in Windows. We just use that browser-based tool. Here you have Whois built directly into the operating system. So what I can do is Whois, just in case you do not recall that specific tool, I can do Whois, and it will do a query. And what it's going to do is it's pulling the record, out for that host name. It's pulling that out of out of public records. Now, what's kind of funny is that when you go through it, it's got, whoops, going up way too far on there. I have, so there's my Whois for Microsoft.com. Let me expand it out. So there's my Whois. So, okay, well, I've got, some profanity going on. What would the day be without profanity?
Yeah, right.
So, yeah. All right. So there's some stuff going on. It looks like the records have maybe been altered or busted or something like that. But in any case, what I have here is I've got information, about that specific, domain. So here you can see who they registered it with, and there's different registrations going on here. I'm not sure what's happening over here. It looks like someone's busted in, is playing some sort of prank or joke, or has an axe to grind, because you go up through several of these, and there's some stuff going on.
They really do have
here.
some fake records, it looks like, inserted in there, don't they?
Yeah, so it's causing some issues with this. So this isn't a problem on our end. But this is something that that we're seeing is in here. This is actually not bad that this is happening. We pulled up Whois, and it's pulling up some of these different pieces of information. Where if we looked at this, I mean, common sense says it's probably these are not legit here, because Microsoft's not going to. I hope Microsoft's not going to do some of this stuff, but well, that's an interesting one. Swinging community and hacks, and
Right.
And we're just going to stay away from the rest of that.
Okay, good.
Jason's over there censoring the stuff out. Like, great.
Right.
There's going to be black boxes over all that stuff later on. But it's actually good that happened, because you can see that stuff in there, and that's pretty obvious. But what if you saw other stuff that wasn't so obvious? You could use the various tools we have in there to start separating it, to see, okay, let's analyze this different ways to see what's going on here. What's the real thing. So any case, this is information, like I said, on their domain. You can see different things that are going on with it. Be prepared when you look at something like this that sometimes you might have less information that's in here than you would expect. You have a truncated record. Here I happen to have a fully populated record, have who registered it, and have information in there. You can see the admin information, who's responsible for doing the paperwork and technical information. You have all that good stuff, an email address. I mean, so that's again not a bad start to have, and it's confirmed some of the stuff that we saw by doing an NS lookup, because we see name server information in there. So this would be a source that kind of confirmed that. So we're doing pretty good. We got that Whois stuff. Now let me just kind of point out. I won't worry about all the stuff in here. But let me just point out, when you're doing this, as I mentioned at the beginning of this, we used this on. We did use this in the CEH course, and we did all this stuff through Windows. Well, Whois, like I said, in Windows, since it's not built in, there is no Whois client in Windows. You have to go to a website or something to do this. Right. Well, or download a utility. You actually can get Whois for the Windows operating system. Microsoft does make it, but for whatever reason, it's not part of the system. You actually have to go up to their site and download it. It's for free, and then you can shove it in there, and then you can use it. It works the exact same way. So if you do want to have that same thing over there, I just figured it's something I'd throw in that you don't have to do that. You can use one of those special tools we had over in that class that does that, or you can just download the Whois client for it instead of using a browser-based tool. So.
Right, 'cause it's all in that registrar's database. So.
Yeah, it's all coming from the same place. The thing I would tell you when you look at that information, like I said, don't necessarily expect it always to be complete when you look at it. When you say it comes from the same registrar's database, one of the things that we do get sometimes is some of the registrars that you go through, they actually will sanitize it all. There's one main database that they all go to, but they will. It's not uncommon for them to sanitize it, and they only give you like a small piece of it because people may be trying to do what we're doing here, but for evil purposes, I guess if you want to put it that way. So. That's something that sometimes that may not be there, so be prepared for that. What you should be seeing is something like you just saw on screen here for Microsoft with the who registered it, the admin, and technical. We should always know that those are going to be there, plus the name server, stuff like that. If that stuff's not there, they're pretty much hiding it from you. So you're going to have to go someplace else to get it. That's one of the things I don't like about those websites. Some of the websites you go to for Whois will not display that. And some people don't even go to the Whois websites. They'll go to something like GoDaddy or one of those hosting providers, and they'll go there and look up a domain name with the intent of getting that information. Well, they won't display that. Some of the registrars will not display that stuff because they just want to tell you, hey, that domain is registered to somebody, and here's the information on when it was registered and when it expires and blah, 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 and it won't tell you any other detailed information.
Because they're just trying to sell you a domain name, so they're going to say, oh, that one's taken here. Wouldn't you like this one? Here's one that's similar, that kind of thing. So
Yeah, so again, that's like kind of knowing your stuff, knowing that if those things aren't there, they're supposed to be there, so something's happened between point A and point B. Fortunately, something like this in Kaylee, when it does a Whois like this, it's very rare for it to see it truncated like that. That's one of the benefits of using a command line one. If you use a browser-based one, yeah, they could be running a script that actually chops that stuff out and gets rid of it. So we don't have to worry about that here necessarily, but be vigilant about that. So we're off to a pretty good start. We've got name servers, we've got we've got DNS info, we've also got something that's interesting, and we already know what the situation is based on prior experience. We know that when we look at Microsoft's record in NSLookup, we saw 2 IP addresses for it, and so we know from before that that's a load balancing situation. Because if you recall, the way we determined that is there was nothing that told us that was load balancing, but we could tell by, again, doing that inference. Because what did we do? If you recall, we looked at Netcraft, saw his IP addresses, and then I was telling you guys, hey, look over to the right, and I was telling you about the importance of platform knowledge early on in that course, just like it's going to apply here. I was telling you that when you look at that information, you have an operating system showing in Netcraft, and then you also have web server information. And you saw in some of those, you saw like a version of IIS, like 7, 7.5, or 8, or 8.5, and then you saw Linux or something else over, and you know that those things don't go together. That's not happening. So there's something, it's fingerprinting the operating system at the network stack level, and then it's identifying the web server at the application level. It's getting the 2 results, and that's fine to do that, but those 2 results, there's more to them than that. They can't exist in that combination. So we knew there was something else there. Once we did a little more research and did some inference on the whole thing, we knew that, yeah, there has to be Windows underneath that IIS version, so why is it saying Linux? Well, looking a little bit more, looking through some other sources, we were eventually able to determine that was a network appliance. Okay, well, so we did that there, but all we have at this point, if we take that stuff off the table, we've got a couple IP addresses. Well, what does that mean? We've got a couple IP addresses. You might be aware of, and I would hope if you're at this point, you know what load balancing is, and by the time you're doing this sort of thing, you might already be able to infer that that is load balancing, but you don't know for sure because you don't have enough information. So right now you've just dumped a couple things out to a text file, or you've written it down in an Excel spreadsheet, or however you do it. You've got that documented. Well, now we've got to start building on top of this information. So we're starting to get a foundation. The next thing is now going into Kaylee's own tools and start mixing those in. I do, and just in case you're wondering, you're like, well, he's starting with stuff that I could do, I already know, or I can already do without having Kaylee. That's fine. That's not uncommon to start when you're doing a pen test, to start with some of the basics. You can jump right in and use some of the Kaylee tools after you see some of the stuff that I'm going to use. That's totally fine. You want to go in and jump in and use those things right off the bat. I'm not going to tell you no. I'm not going to say, hey, you're being dumb. Don't do that. If that's how you choose to do it and you're aware of it, hey, go for it. I can't really. I'm not going to argue with you one bit. I found, using some of these things, and then I just build on it and get some of this stuff. It works for me. Using some of these tools, I've used them for years, are really nice and quick and simple to use. Give me precisely what I want, and I don't want to have to go through a bunch of hoops. Fine, I get what I need here, and then I feed that into those later tools.
It's almost, to me, it's almost like a good starting point. It's easy. I don't have to think a lot. They're available in any operating system. Kaylee's what I'm going to use to do most of my tests, so I might as well be in there. But you got to start somewhere. You got to get that first bit of information, right? And even if those IP addresses, we don't know if it's a load balancer or not, we can still take those addresses and pin them up on our board. Again, I keep thinking back to those crime scene shows.
It works.
Maybe there's a big question mark next to that one. You know how they do that? They'll have, we're not really sure. We're thinking maybe this is where it's going, but we're going to put it up on the board so we don't forget about it. Put a question mark by it. Still got a little more research to go. So we're getting there. We're getting our feet wet. We're starting to get some of the information that we need. But looking at the clock, Sean, we're about out of time. So why don't we take a break here? And when we come back, we'll dive even further into some of the tools we can use to uncover that network information. So, ladies and gentlemen, hope you enjoyed this episode. We're signing off for now for IT Pro TV. I'm Mike Roderick.
And I'm Sean Ariano.
And we'll see you next time.